G'day all, it's Colin from PCTLC and thanks for joining me. In this video we're going to be looking at PeppermintOS again, this time the Devuan version. Now what is Devuan? Let's just quickly check that out. So I found this on an internet search, Devuan system software. Devuan is a fork of the Debian Linux distribution that uses SysVinit, Runit or OpenRC instead of systemd. So Devuan aims to avoid lock-in by projects like systemd and aims to maintain compatibility with other init systems to avoid detaching Linux from other Unix systems. Package manager is apt, which is based on Debian. It's Linux. Initial release May 3rd, 2016, 6 years ago. It has various open source licenses and the default user face is XFCE. So that's just a very quick explanation of Devuan. What's the differences between SysVinit and systemd? So SysV is one of the first and traditional init systems for the Unix/Linux operating system. Init is the first process started by the kernel during system boot and is a parent process for everything. Most Linux distributions first started using the traditional init system called systemv or sysv. Over the years, several alternative init systems have been released to address design limitations in the stable versions such as launchd, service management, systemd and upstart. But the systemd has been adopted by many large Linux distributions over the traditional SysVinit manager. What is systemd? It's a new init system and system manager that has become so popular that it has been widely transformed into the new standard init system by most Linux distributions. So here you've got some service commands and the differences between sysvinit and systemd commands. So we'll just run through that very quickly there. And then the next you have run levels and targets. And then you got the command differences there. I have to say the sysvinit looks like a lot more simple command than systemd. And then you've got some other systemd commands there. Now I have heard many people speak about systemd. They don't like systemd, sysvinit is better and all these things. I don't really get into that, to be honest. I'm just happy when my system starts up. Especially after a fresh install. I suppose there's certainly some arguments and heavy opinions towards the new and the old. So I just thought I would look around the internet and just see what I could find. The disadvantages of systemd when compared to older init systems. So sheer complexity. I believe every other disadvantage stems from this one item. So that's someone's opinion. I've just found these randomly on the internet. Advantages: significantly simplified initialization scripts, improved integration with SC Linux, basic process logging. So I suppose if you wanted to read the whole thing, you could pause that. So here's another one I found. The question was, how does systemd work? Poorly. Systemd is one of the most complicated, over-engineered, messy pieces of gorp in the system. The Unix philosophy has always been one of small, easily changed tools. Systemd runs in the exact opposite direction. It's large, monolithic, and has its fingers into everything. No thank you. So once again, just another random opinion. Which are the advantages that systemd has over init in Unix-like systems? Systemd allows for much more complex dependency specifications. In the old etc init d rc.d days, you just had to pick a number and things started in order. So disk stuff was early, then network stuff, then things like SSH daemon and monitoring tools. It works pretty well for most things, but there are some tricky ones like disks that depend on ISCSI. You have to do some disks, then network, then some more disks, and you just have to try to pick the right numbers to make that happen in the correct order. With systemd, you write configuration files that says things like this service requires disk and provides network, or this service requires disk and network. At boot time, the files are all checked, then it's decided which ones can start and which ones need to wait on others to start. In addition, systemd babysits the services a bit more, so you can ask it later, did this service start okay at boot? So yes, there's some different opinions there. I suppose you could just search forever finding these opinions on the internet. But I suppose at the end of the day, unless you're a developer and you have to deal with the behind the scenes stuff, you wouldn't really know what the differences are. The only main thing that I am probably very well aware of is I think SysVinit cannot run snap packages. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the major differences for software users or the operating system users, is that it doesn't run snap packages. There may be a workaround. I didn't look for any information on that. So I thought I'd just run through a bit of a backstory on that, considering that what we're looking at here with Peppermint Devuan is something that's using SysVinit, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And it's systemd free. So that's the differences. And I thought it was important to reflect on that, just so we know what we're dealing with here. I don't suspect we'll see a lot of differences. My expectation is this Peppermint OS based on Devuan will probably look and feel very much the same as the Peppermint OS based on Debian. I don't suspect there'll be too much differences. That's my expectation, so I'm looking forward to checking this out. At this point, everything looks pretty much the same. I wouldn't expect too much differences at this point, but you never know. We're talking about startup systems here, so things could be different within the startup, but it's looking the same. So things didn't seem to be too much different on the startup there. We had the Peppermint icon, the same as Peppermint OS based on Debian, with some animations there. So what I want to do is have a quick look at the live desktop first, and then we'll get into the install. So we have the welcome to Peppermint screen, install a web browser, still got the same thing there. Got your software selections, all looks the same. We do have an option for snap package platform, that's interesting. We'll get to that once we've installed, I think. We've got the Peppermint extras, same deal. So I had a person make comment on my previous Peppermint OS reflections video that I just made. I hope that person doesn't mind me mentioning their name. It's KS Woodsman. And it was mentioned that no one ever clicks on the community links down here in the welcome screen, which opens a pyqt web engine in a similar fashion to the ICE SSB, and it's not tied to a specific web browser. So let's check that out real quick. So that takes you to Peppermint OS. So you still need an internet connection for these to work, I believe. Got Facebook page, Peppermint OS Facebook, and this one here, what was that one? Peppermint OS community. And I think that is the same as the ICE tutorial. That seems to open up in a very similar fashion. So I did open this on my distro reflections, but it was to do with the Kumo. And one thing I noticed was, which I didn't look at in the video, is if I had to scroll down further on that tutorial, there was also information on xDaily, which I sort of couldn't work out in the video. You got here as well the Open Pep Hub, which is also a link down the bottom here. So we got that and hardware and software options. Now in here we've got ICE and hBlock. Now in Peppermint Reflections on the latest distro, that was called Kumo, but that was only there after I updated the tools, so that may change. Definitely this tutorial here will probably change to Kumo Tutorial, maybe. I didn't even notice that it changed from ICE tutorial to Kumo Tutorial in the distro reflections, to be honest. So that's that. Let's have a quick look at all applications and see if there's any standouts in the menu. Peppermint Hub we know about. Welcome to Peppermint. That's what we've been looking at. So nothing really standing out too much there. So let's do an install of PeppermintOS based on Devuan. Let's just check out the Calamares about, and it's the 3.2.57, which I believe is the same as the one in the Debian build. Let's go next. So this one now has the green, red, green, and yellowish type buttons. It's picked up my location, so let's go next, which is Australia, Perth. English Australian, set as default, next. So the other thing I noticed after the install of the latest build that I downloaded was these little icons here in the selection boxes. Very nice touch. It's got a little peppermint icon depending what you're choosing. So I'm choosing erase disk. You can choose manual partitioning, but I'll choose erase disk. There's our disk up there. So you can choose, if you got more than one hard drive, you can choose it from up here. So let's erase disk. Let's do a swap to file, ext4. We'll use ext4, and you got those other options which we've looked at in previous installs. Let's go next. So in the comment it was mentioned that the VM may have run out of memory while downloading the packages. So that sort of makes sense, because I did mention on screen with a comment that I had no issues on real hardware. So that sort of backs that up and makes sense. So let's not install too much. Let's just go to Internet Options, Web Browser, and I will install Firefox ESR. And that's all I'm installing. Let's go next. And user information has been entered. We can click on Next. There's the summary of what's going to happen, and we'll click Install. So off we go. So while that's installing, I've navigated to my ISO folder where all my downloaded ISOs are. And it was mentioned also within that comment on how to check the build date on your ISO. So these are some of the interesting ones here. This is the command. So if I look at a PeppermintOS, that's probably the first one I downloaded, but I'm not sure whether it's the actual first one. So this is the command here that you run to check out the date on the ISO. So I've never known about this, but pretty handy to know. The ones that I've dated, there's the 13th of the 8th, the 22nd of the 5th. So I've also got a 11th of Feb one as well. So I'll just quickly check those out. So if I change this one to PeppermintOS AMD the 11th one, hit the tab key to autocomplete and enter that, and you'll see that it's 2022 and it's the 11th of Feb. So that's how you get the date on that. Let's just try a couple of the others, which was 22nd of the 5th. Let's try that one. And that was download. I may have renamed these because one of them didn't have the date. So I think that was the original one I downloaded. I've changed the date according to what come up on this command. So it's the 22nd of the 5th, 2022. Right there. I think this is times. I believe these may be times. And seconds, right down to the seconds. And then I've got an Easy Archer build there, which came up a couple of times. I checked when I downloaded that. That was the the 8th of the 7th, 2022. So that's how you can find the date of an ISO that you've downloaded if you're not sure if it doesn't have a name. So that's good info. That's great info. So you can check on what the ISO date is. The problem is my slight criticism of the ISO on the Peppermint website is you still don't know which one, whether they've updated or not. So unless they have some release notes there saying that it's a new release, you wouldn't know. But I suppose they would have some release notes on the website regarding any new releases. You would have to think. I'm pretty sure they do. So anyway, that install is done. Let's go next. Oh, next doesn't work. I've got to click done. I'm clicking next. So let's click done. You can see that's red. Restarting the system. there we have the animated logo there, and the grub screen looked pretty much the same as well. So let's log into our freshly installed desktop. So the first thing we're going to do is open Peppermint Hub, navigate to the Hardware and Software tab, and we're going to click on Update Manager. Now they've given a new look to the Peppermint Update Manager. It's not just opening a terminal. They've given it its own little GUI, and it still looks terminal-like. It's still text-based, but at least it has a much nicer look about it. So let's do our system updates. Click this button here. Off it goes. And you can see the Devuan repos there. And that is the update complete, and it does tell you what's done, it's completed. Nothing different compared to the Debian Based. Now what we'll do is update the Pep Tools, now that I know what that's up to. Confused me a little bit in the distro reflections. Peppermint Tools have been updated, and you have got the options button here of setting a schedule for updating the Peppermint Tools. So your Peppermint Tools have been updated. So now I'm interested to see, let's close that and open that back up. And yes, now it says Kumo. It's got the xDaily here. And then if we look at the welcome screen, I think it is. Let's just quickly look at that. Welcome to Peppermint. Now it has a Kumo tutorial. So we're going to open that because I want to finish off a couple of things that I never mentioned in my distro reflections. So this opens up in a pyqtwebengine. I believe all of these links, or well, not all of them, but some of them. We didn't check if we had Firefox. Yeah, it's installed. I did see it updating within the updates. So we looked at Kumo, and then I didn't go any further. Now here we go. We got the xDaily. xDaily, simply put, is a semi-automatic command line system updater that will also upgrade the system by opening a terminal and type in sudo xDaily, enter your password when prompted. It will clean out your cache, trim an SSD, update your icon cache, and auto-remove old repos. You will be prompted by the yes or no option during the process. If there is a newer kernel version, remember to reboot your computer. The reason for the xDaily tool is so that a user can decide when they want to perform maintenance on their system. It performs not only just updates, but other system maintenance commands in terminal. xDaily is a tool that is generally ran manually. xDaily will update both Pep Tools and system updates. And then you've got the Peppermint Update Manager, Peppermint Command Line Updater, and Suggested Packages. So you've got your Peppermint Update Manager, which is here in the Peppermint Hub. It's a GUI tool that will allow a user to manually update their system and Pep Tools. Additionally, this tool has a feature to schedule when you want updates to happen, which is what we just looked at. Peppermint CLI Updater. This tool is a community effort. Members of the community built this tool and suggested it as a way to quickly update the system without the need to open the Peppermint Update Manager or perform maintenance such as what is done by xDaily. That is why it is on the panel with the clock by default, so that a user can simply click that shortcut and immediately start the update. So let's just quickly check that. Put in my password. There'll be nothing to update because we just did that. System applied updates. Finalizing and done. Press Q to quit. So that's what that's all about. Suggested packages. This tool can be found in the Peppermint Hub right here, and also on the welcome screen here. They are both the same, I believe. That's that, and this one here. I also think that this button should be called Suggested Packages as well. It's a bit confusing that it says install a web browser. I suppose it was there because they had no browser to start with, but I think that could also be called suggested packages. I suppose that's just for any newbies that are running Peppermint, that just leads them to where they can find a web browser if they've forgotten to select that within the installer. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I think, for that. My 2 cents worth, I suppose. So this tool can be found in the Peppermint Hub, or if you open the welcome screen, it will be the install a web browser button. So you got the information there to tell you that. This is not a custom package manager to replace any of the software stores or the Synaptic Manager. It simply is that a list of packages that the Peppermint community voted on that they felt would be useful for a starting point for a user. That is the software section. You see the packages listed, which is here. On the browser side, listed are all the browsers that are available in the Devuan repos. The way that was decided was based on this wiki post from Debian. Let's quickly check that out. So this is the Debian wiki here, graphical browsers. So that's where they got that information from. So graphical browsers, console, web browsers that can be used in a terminal emulator environment. Okay, and then third-party browsers. Brave and unGoogle Chromium. Non-free browsers, Opera. Inactive projects. So that's where they got that information from. So that's on the Debian wiki under web browsers. So that's very interesting. So that's where that information comes from. And the link is there. You can easily get to that by using the Kumo Tutorial link, which is where I was. Full screen that, and that's where it is. So it's all within the operating system itself. Anything outside of that posting will not be included. Additionally, we steered away from the terminal browsers as it was voted to do so. It's up to the user to determine what they want to install and how they install their browser. So that's where that information comes from, and that's where that list comes from as well. So xDaily, if we open that and put in our password, and we run that, and it's just going to run through and do what it said. We probably need the welcome screen up for that, don't we? I think we need the welcome screen for that tutorial. I think it'd be handy to have that tutorial actually within the Peppermint Hub. I think would be nice, so we don't have to keep going back to the welcome screen. I think the welcome screen's done its job once you've worked out everything. And I think clean out your cache, trim an SSD, update your icon cache, and auto remove old repos. So let's see what it's up to. Sync up the Pep Tools completed. Press any key to continue, and it's done its job. So there we go. So looking at this Devuan Build has given me an opportunity to just go a little bit more in depth with some of these things that I wasn't 100% sure about when I did my distro reflections, and it was a matter of finding the information on that. I was in the right spot. I just didn't go that extra mile in reading the documentation. So if you are looking through documentation, make sure you read the whole thing, because there might be something more there than meets the eye. So one thing I've noticed is there's no option for installing snap packages, only Flathub. You got your Gnome store and again Kumo. So we're going to do this again. Very quickly, I'm going to copy that and paste it here. And I'll just right click and it automatically pasted it. We'll go NetBank, install the app, icon location. Unless you've got an icon for that, I'd have to probably make I've got icons on my main system, just don't have one here. What I can do is just put a Peppermint logo on there, probably open that. I didn't try favicon again, did I? But that's not working. And then I believe there's a translation problem for internet and network, so we'll just choose network, and we'll make this available for all users and install. Now I'll close this. Internet, it's not under internet, is it there? NetBank, let's try and look for it. NetBank, there it is there. What's it under? It's got the Peppermint icon. Internet, oh, there it is there. Oh boy, I was looking for a different icon then. Okay, so there's your NetBank. Under Internet, just choose Network, NetBank, open that up. And that opened up really, really quick. It was a bit slow on Peppermint Debian Build, but that was super duper fast. So I don't know what the difference is there. Maybe they've just done some updates, I would say. Now let's open Kumo just again real quick. Now the thing with Kumo is if you manage, you can select app to manage. So I can select NetBank. I can choose to delete that application from here, or I can click Go, and that'll put the information in and we can save it. But under here, we can choose NetBank, and then we can click Go and run. So that will run that on a once-off basis, I believe. There we go. So that's just a way you can quickly look for, within this menu, if there's probably quite a few more selections, you can just do a once-off run and close that. So that's what Kumo's doing there. So when I logged into this, I tried roaming around my bank and all that, and I opened I don't think it's a PDF, it's an online see this bill, so it'll give you the option to look at the bill. And when I clicked on that, it didn't open up. Now I know ICE opens it up in another tab, I believe it is, and then you can download that as a PDF. It could be an online PDF anyway. So notice that Kumo does not do that. Didn't give me the option. I don't know if that's a security thing or not, but definitely ICE does do that. So I just thought that was worth a mention. System information. There's our system information there. So I was just scanning through this real quick. There's no mention of the fact that it's based on Devuan in this info, which is interesting. I thought it might have had Devuan somewhere, just so you know. We've got a task manager there. I don't know if I opened that in distro reflections, but what are we running here? Memory 9%, 716 megabytes. I'm not sure if based on either systemd or SysVinit, whether that makes a huge difference to memory use. I'm not really sure about that. CPUs are pretty average anyway. And you've got your Peppermint Hub links here, which takes you to the quick setup. Appimage takes you to the Appimage site. You got the Synaptic, and then you've got the Gnome store. Now I was just double checking this. I don't think I tried this on distro reflections. Now what this does, again, opens up in that pyqtwebengine, I would say, and it tells you about sandbox applications and Flatpak and so forth. That's the Gnome store. However, if we are to install Gnome store, let's go to suggested packages and we install Gnome software, install that, and that is done. So if I close the Peppermint Hub, I think I probably need to, and then open that back up. I'm assuming that Gnome store now becomes a link to open Gnome store. And there we go. And now it's opening the software store. So prior to install, the Gnome store is just giving you information about what it's all about, pretty much. And once it's installed, that becomes a link to open your software, your Gnome software, which will also be in your menu. Software. No application data found. So these are all the installed applications. Update. Software is up to date. Now there's no application data found because we have not installed Flathub. Let's go to the quick setup, and Devuan is based on Debian. So we go to Debian, apt install Flatpak, copy that into the terminal. That would have to be sudo apt install Flatpak, put in your password, and yes, enter that. The Y is capital, so you just enter, that's the default choice, and that's done. And then we go back to this again, scroll down to here, copy that, paste that, put in your password. For the Flatpak application to show up, we need to install that as well. So we paste that. That probably needed to have a sudo in front as well. Sudo, enter, and enter, and that's done. So we probably need to restart. Let's do a quick restart. We can say don't show again on that one. You can always go back to the welcome screen from the menu there. Let's go to the Pep Hub, open up Gnome software, and now the catalog and the Flatpak information is being downloaded into the Gnome software. And that is the packages cataloged within the Gnome software. And you've got all the categories here. And if we was to look at something, I would have to think, you've got an install button there. So you've only got an install button here because actually I would have thought there would be the Devuan repos in here, maybe not. That's interesting. So these are all Flatpaks. Now you normally got a menu up here to choose which repo or which source that you're getting your information from. Normally you have the deb packages, which is from the Debian repos, or the Flatpak. Now this is based on Devuan. Maybe that doesn't happen. So maybe the Gnome software is not pulling anything from the Devuan repos. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to be. I'm not sure if there's any extra we need to do for that to show up. Software repositories, about software, that's working, 3.38. And software repositories are not opening. Update preferences, okay. But it looks to me like we're not getting any Devuan repos hooked up within the Gnome software. That's what it looks like to me. So I suppose that if you wanted to look at the Devuan repos, would have to not sudo, but apt search. Let's go Audacity, which is what we looked at in the Gnome software. Let's just open the Gnome store again. And we go back to here, Audacity, stable 2.4.2. And these are all from stable. So it's definitely there. And that's definitely the Flathub. This is the name of the package to install. This is the name of it, Audacity. So if we was to install that, if we was to go sudo apt install Audacity and put in our password, yes. Let's just check it out in the menu, multimedia, Audacity is there. There's Audacity, okay. And that's Audacity. Let's just we'll open the Gnome software again and check out audio video, go to Audacity, and you'll see that you still got the install option. So the Flatpak is not installed. It's from the Devuan repos. I'm pretty sure that would be right, Devuan repos. So I've been through the menu, I've looked at all the applications, gone through the Peppermint Hub. The only thing that I've established here is there's no option to install Snap packages. Snap is not an option here at all, probably because it is it's using SysVinit to start up rather than systemd. So that's the only difference that I've really seen. Otherwise, this is pretty much a carbon copy of the Peppermint OS based on Debian. The only differences here is I run through some things that made me look a little bit more professional and not as clunky as it was in the distro reflections, probably because things were a bit new. I wasn't sure about them. Definitely everything is here except for Snap packages, like I said. hBlock has still got that in there. I haven't started that up, but it does turn green once you start it. Put in our password. Helps prevent some of the tracking that you get when using your web browser. So it seems to add those files within your system to make sure that your certain domains or a certain list, and what is there? 271,999 blocked domains. I've done this before manually a long time ago, but there's a list that you can get to block so many domains that actually track you when you're on the internet. So this thing is applied and working for you straight away. So that's pretty handy indeed. And you know it's applied because it's now turned green. If it's red, you haven't run that yet. So I suppose the plan here from the Peppermint team was to provide two different distros that are completely identical to each other, that caters for the people who prefer to use the old school startup SysVinit system rather than the newer systemd that most distros have adopted today. They seem to both work exactly the same. They look exactly the same. So I suppose the Peppermint team have reached their goal in that respect. So that was PeppermintOS based on Devuan. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting and informative, and thanks for watching.